Yes.
Let's start with Sam in the UK. How are you? Sam?
Good. How are you?
We're doing all right. Or I am. How are you, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Cool. What do you got for us, Sam?
Yeah, basically, I want to explain why we have slavery in the Bible and why it's not understood properly.
Okay.
That's a good question.
So, I mean, I can understand it from a human point of view. Yeah, slavery seems like a very bad thing, and you wouldn't expect someone like God to sort of just abolish it and get rid of it. But the thing is, we need to create. We don't think of it from a creator's point of view. God is like, he can do anything, yeah, and basically, what God does, yeah, you can't call him immoral or call him wrong because
why not?
It's like the kind of because
we can. Moral and immoral is a subjective opinion.
Yeah, the analogy I have, yeah, is like God is like an author. It does. You have an author of a book, and the author writes.
No, God's not the author of the book.
No, I'm saying he's the author of our reality, of our lives.
Oh, okay, well, you haven't demonstrated that either, but even if he's the author of, like, if I have kids, does that mean that I get to do whatever I want with them?
Yeah, yes.
Really?
Whoa,
so if I have kids, I can just beat them and torture them as much as I want?
No. You're getting away from my point. My point is...
Oh, I know I'm getting away from your point because it's garbage. See, this notion that God can do whatever he wants, first of all, is a bunch of lip service because you haven't demonstrated there's a God in the first place. But what the Bible advocates is for one human being to own another human being as property. God is irrelevant there.
No, it is relevant because I'm saying God is like an author. That is an important thing. You're just dismissing and you're not understanding.
I can say that God isn't the author because...
Yeah, but as a non-believer, you will say that, I don't believe, demonstrate God. I don't.
No, using the premises you present. I mean, is the God omniscient? Does it know everything?
Yes, that's right.
Then it knows all its actions.
That's right, yeah.
Right. So it's eternal, correct? It's always known all its actions. It never decided its actions. The God is not the author of its own actions. It can't be.
Why not?
Because it never decided them. It never had to decide anything. It always knew what it was going to do. At no point did it not know what it was going to do.
No, what? You get away from my point. My point is...
Yeah.
Very immoral because
you're setting up premises for your point, and if your premises don't work, then your point is invalid.
So hang on. So
1 second.
You hang on 1 second. The Bible advocates for one human being to own another human being, and you're saying this is morally permissible because God created all this, and God said men can own other men.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm trying to say, just as when an author writes a book, and in the book has slavery or genocide, do you say to the author, you're immoral?
If anyone advocates for someone else owning another person's property, yes, I'm going to point to that person and say they're immoral.
I'm saying you got an author who writes books. Now that author...
This isn't a fucking book. It's life, Sam.
No, but this is it. This is what you don't understand.
I do understand. Sam, do you legitimately think that I haven't heard this bullshit argument from other people before? That God is the author of the universe and therefore whatever God says goes? I literally was raised on this. Do you think this is the first time I've ever heard it?
Yeah, but I'm saying, from the point of view of a believer...
The believer's point of view is the human being's point of view is the only one that matters until you demonstrate that there is a God and why anybody should care what that God thinks.
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from a human point of view, way that you're a non-believer. That's fair enough.
No, Sam. I was a fundamentalist Christian for 20 some odd years. You don't just get to pretend like I came to this because I was a non-believer. It was the recognition of some of these problems that helped me get to be a non-believer. Now, you have come with an argument. You have come with an argument that has been presented countless times. Do you have any evidence to support your position?
I don't need evidence for God. I'm saying this is...
Okay. I don't need any evidence for God, he says. Cool.
Okay.
If you're willing to believe things without evidence, then you can join Dinesh D'Souza, who I had a debate with in New York last week, who literally sat there and said that if he doesn't have evidence of whether or not there's an afterlife, and I don't have evidence of whether or not there's an afterlife, that he is not on weaker footing for believing that there is an afterlife without evidence. Fundamentally don't understand epistemology. Believing something in the absence of evidence is less sound, is less epistemologically sound than not believing something when there isn't evidence. And so if you're going to call in and say that you don't need evidence for God, but then you're going to assert that God, because he's the author and creator of everything, gets to say, hey, it's okay for you to own other people as property, then I'm just going to hang up. Because here's the thing. If you were to say God is the governor of the universe and decides all of moral laws, I would say, no, he doesn't, because I still get to make up my own mind. And what you would be saying then is that it's impossible for anything for a God to do to be immoral, which means that if a God decides to, drown everybody on earth except for 8 people.
That would never happen.
That would not be immoral. All those babies and animals and everybody else who died, nothing immoral about that. If God decides to punish and torment people for not being gullible, nothing immoral about that. And so now you've extended it to the point where God can say, hey, you know what? Go ahead, enslave those other people, beat them a little bit, kill off all those people there, but keep the young virgin women for yourself. And that nobody could ever say that this isn't immoral. So you, Sam, have set up a scenario that is a win-win scenario for whatever God proposition you're willing to accept without evidence. That is as definitionally unsound and gullible and virtually in the arena of batshittery as anything I've ever heard.
Yeah. Now, look, if Geppetto creates Pinocchio, now, and Pinocchio is apparently alive and sentient, and is Geppetto allowed to torture and torture and molest Pinocchio? No. Pinocchio is a sentient being now. Sentient being. And
I got no strings on me.
It's like the God created man, God created mankind, but he treats them like, the little green soldiers that children have, right?
No, God created human beings and set up a scenario so that some human beings could torment and torture other human beings. That's the God that you're worshiping. That's the God that you're believing in without any evidence. A monumental. See, I pulled out the Bible figuring we were actually going to talk about what the Bible says. Turns out
it's irrelevant.
Like with most believers I engage with, what the Bible says really doesn't enter their damn minds. Because if it's inconvenient to their particular view, then it's going to be cherry picked away.
It's metaphor,
and if it's or it's I'm interpreting it wrong. So I want to make sure that I'm actually reading it. We have a call that's